Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. If I could have quiet now, please, in the room. Thank you very much for joining us for this session on building resilience and enhancing nutrition in Africa's food systems. My name is Sandy Thomas, and I'm Director of the Global Panel on Agriculture, Food Systems and Nutrition. And along with our partner for this event, UAMH, United Action Against Malnutrition, we're very pleased to be participating in Rome Nutrition Week today. And I'd like to thank the organising committee for inviting us. Now, we have some people today participating online and some in person. With me today in person, and they'll be joining us as we go along, we have Ambassador Her Excellency Patricia Kondolo of Zambia. We also have Peter Cleary, Deputy Permanent Representative of Ireland, on stage with me here. And we also have Deputy Permanent Representative of Lesotho and co-chair of the Rome Group of Friends of Nutrition, Kare Mofili Koen. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Kware. We also have several colleagues, as I said, online, including the Chief Executive of UAMH, Lord Johnny Oates. Now, I'm just going to say a few words before we kick off fairly soon with the discussion. But since our inception in 2013, the Global Panel has worked across several African and South Asian countries. And what it's done is provide evidence-based policy advice to political leaders in many governments on priority actions for transforming food systems in the local context, always with the focus on nutrition. Now, in Africa, this has been driven by our high-profile panel members, which have included Agnes Kalibata, the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akina Deshina, and former AU Commissioner, Her Excellency Rhoda Tumissine. Now, in January 2025, we published a new report, Building Resilience and Enhancing Nutrition in African Food Systems. And I'd just like to explain why the Global Panel has focused on the resilience of food systems and why this report has messages that are important for Africa and for us all. Now, you will be hearing this afternoon about the widening gap between what food systems need to deliver for Africa's rapidly growing and urbanizing populations and the threats and the stresses they increasingly need to cope with. And one of the key objectives of this work was to look at that gap. In the future, many African food systems will struggle to function in a world that is becoming increasingly more uncertain and more volatile in the context of growing debt and health and environmental crises in many countries. And it's essential that the resilience of food systems is strengthened to cope with these uncertainties. Now, already food systems in Africa, as we know, are failing to provide sustainable, healthy diets for many millions of its population. And we know also that 2.8 billion people worldwide were not able to afford a healthy diet in 2022. And this deficit essentially is driving political efforts across the continent to transform food systems. However, the inadequate resilience of food systems puts a brake on that food system transformation, and in turn, poor diets that ensue are acting as a brake on so many policy agendas, on poverty, weak economic growth, health, and child development. So to discuss how resilience can be built and nutrition enhanced in African food systems, we'll be hearing shortly from Professor Evan Fraser, who led the work for the Global Panel, and also our country partners from Ethiopia, Malawi and Sierra Leone, who worked with more than 100 experts and government officials to produce this Global Panel report in just 1 year. Now, this collaborative approach, working with these 3 countries, also enabled the work to embed its analysis and advice in the day-to-day political, economic, social and cultural realities of those countries. And I'd also like to thank, at this point, support from Irish Aid, who funded this work. Now, first, I'm just going to lay out how we get the event is going to pan out. As I said, we've got some people online as well as here. So we'll be hearing shortly from the Deputy Permanent Representative for Ireland, Peter Cleary, and also Lord Johnny Oates online. Professor Evan Fraser will then outline the findings of the report, and he'll lead an online discussion with our country partners and experts. And then this will be followed by a short session on Rome perspectives from Ambassador Patricia Condolo and also the permanent representative of Lesotho sitting in the audience, Kari Milfiliko-Queen. There is hopefully, depending on how quickly we can make up some of the lost time, there will be hopefully time for a couple of questions, either from the audience here or online, time permitting. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so let's make a start. So I'd like to invite Peter, you to make your intervention. Would you like to come and stand here? Or? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Colleagues, friends, and there's a good lot of people online. I believe 70 or 80 people online, so I'm not playing to an empty hall here. So anyway, I want to thank the global panel for inviting me to address this event in a very important week, and I want to thank all the organisers of Rome Nutrition Week. It's been a great learning experience for me, who's only a year in Rome, and hopefully we can progress together. I thought that the phrase at the very beginning of the week, I forget this right now, acting together, coordination of policy, and cooperation and coordination of policy, we can achieve greater things. In recent years, we've seen a worrying rise in the deterioration of food security worldwide. 2 weeks ago, I stood here when the global report for 2025 on food crises was released for 2024. And we have 295 million people across 53 countries experiencing acute levels of hunger. As I said here 2 weeks ago, try and visualize that. We tend to think of 295 or we think of the million, but we can't really, the scale of it is just enormous. These people are hungry as we speak now. That's an increase of 14 million on the previous year, 2023's report. In the face of this global food crisis, Ireland believes that food systems transformation must be at the heart of our efforts to accelerate progress toward the achievement of our Sustainable Development Goals. The recognition that agriculture and food systems are central to a sustainable future is well enshrined in Ireland's development plan. Irish Aid's development plan is called A Better World, and it's also reflected in my department, home department, the Agriculture, Food and Marine's vision strategy, Food Vision 2030. We aim in our department to be a global leader in food systems by 2030, and we have a project plan mapped out to achieve that. As we witness this significant deterioration in global food and nutrition security due to conflicts more and more rather than less and less, it appears, the advance of the deterioration of our climate and also economic downturns, Ireland is sustaining its commitment to food systems transformation as it is a key strategy towards the relief of hunger and addressing malnutrition, and as also to foster inclusive economic growth. We work in partnership with both the development and humanitarian organisations, but along with that we also invest in research and innovation towards resilient and sustainable food systems. In 2024, we began to work with the global panel specifically by supporting this report, Building Resilience and Enhancing Nutrition in Africa's Food Systems. The report analysed the complex nature and behind food systems with 3 of Ireland's partner countries, Sierra Leone, Malawi and Ethiopia. It assessed challenges and opportunities and recommended measures that would help these countries transition to a more resilient, sustainable and affordable food systems with healthy diets for all. Through this report, the global panel has developed a new evidence-based vision for resilience in food systems and how to substantially strengthen resilience and embedded in the heart of food system transformation. Many countries already recognise the vital importance of building resilience. It has been mentioned here plenty of times so far this week. Translating this into reality, though, is a challenge. The detailed analysis, conclusions and recommendations of the report will inform policy processes at country, regional and international level. They represent a significant contribution towards the evolving food systems transformation narrative. For Africa especially, the report is most timely, given the launch this year in January of the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Programme Strategy and Action Plan, a process which Ireland was proud to support. This report also informed Ireland's position at the subsequent Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris. At that summit, Ireland pledged to provide €250 million a year for the years 26 to 29 to address hunger and malnutrition. This includes a specific commitment to focus on child wasting, which is even the concept of it, let alone the reality, is an abhorrence. Just last week, the panel's report was featured in a regional dialogue in Lilongwe. It was a panel that was organised by Ireland with the World Bank, and the government of Malawi used the report to share lessons learned, successes and challenges in transforming food systems in East and Southern Africa. This report will also inform the upcoming UN Food Systems Summit stocktake, +4 stocktake in Addis in a couple of months' time. I would like to thank the governments of Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, Malawi, and the global panel for all their kind support and collaboration with this initiative. And once again, acting together, policy coherence and coordination are essential but can achieve great things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and it's good to hear how Irish Aid is really committed to the food systems approach to enhancing nutrition. I'd now like to invite Lord Oates from United Against Malnutrition, our partner for this event, to make his remarks now. He's online, and I'm glad to see that he's here. So over to you, Lord Oates.
Thank you, Sandy, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you in person in Rome, but it's nevertheless a great pleasure to join you for this important event, and also to be able to collaborate again with the global panel in hosting the event. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Johnny Oates. I'm a member of the UK House of Lords and co-chair of the UK Parliament's all-party parliamentary group on Africa. I'm also the chief executive, as Sandy has said, of a not-for-profit organisation called United Against Malnutrition and Hunger. We're a UK-based organisation which seeks to raise the profile of global malnutrition with UK audiences and press for action to combat it. We do that by bringing together leaders from scientific, business, finance, military backgrounds, faith, philanthropic and civil society. All of us united in our determination that the UK should be at the heart of global efforts to tackle malnutrition and hunger. And our argument is simple, really, that access to healthy, nutritious diets is foundational to individual and societal development. That malnutrition holds back human potential, it limits educational achievements, reduces labour productivity, increases healthcare costs, and contributes to poverty and inequality across generations. As you all know, undernutrition and micronutrient deficiencies remain persistent challenges across low and middle income countries. These conditions continue to affect large segments of the population, particularly children under 5 and women of reproductive age. Undernutrition is a leading cause of child mortality, contributing to nearly half of all deaths among children under 5. At the same time, micronutrient deficiencies impair cognitive development, weaken immune systems, and reduce productivity over the life course. And that's why it's so important that food systems in low and middle income countries are strengthened and made more resilient so that they can reliably provide that universal access to healthy diets, which are necessary to deliver the nutrients that people need to grow and survive. So this important report under discussion today, produced by the Global Panel in partnership with local experts and stakeholders in partner countries, Ethiopia, Malawi and Sierra Leone, and with, as we've heard, the generous support of the Government of Ireland, identifies the challenges and opportunities facing Africa in building more resilient food systems, and most importantly, makes a number of practical recommendations, which we're going to hear more about shortly. It was a real pleasure to have been able to take part in the recent launch of the report and to have been able to collaborate with Professor Sandy and her colleagues on a number of initiatives to promote the importance of access to good nutrition to audiences in the UK. I very much look forward to the discussion today and to learning more from our speakers about how the UK and other donor nations can collaborate with African partners to support the development of the resilient food systems that will be needed to deliver healthy and nutritious diets to growing populations in Africa over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Johnny, for that. It's been a pleasure collaborating once again with you and your organisation. And obviously you raised a very good point, some very good points in that very short slot. So thank you. So I'm going to move straight to the next part of our session in view of the shortage of time, just so that we can save. So it's my great pleasure to invite Professor Evan Fraser to speak. Now, Evan was chair of our lead expert group for this piece of work. He's also director of the Aral Food Institute at the University of Guelph, and he's also a member of the high-level panel of experts of the CFS. Now, Evan's going to set out the main findings of the report, why resilience is key to African food systems, and this will be followed by a panel discussion with our country partners. But Evan, you've got 15 minutes, I'll let you go.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sandy, and thanks everybody. Lord Oates, Peter, such a privilege and an honor to be able to present the high-level findings of this report. And without wasting any time, we're really hoping that this report resonates with the donor community in particular as a clear appeal to action and a vision for what resilience is based on the lived realities of three African food systems. And we'll move quickly through my opening high-level remarks to the experiences of specifically the teams that did the hard work in Ethiopia, in Malawi, and Sierra Leone. And we're really hoping that this report lands well now for reasons that are familiar, of course, to everybody in this room, that healthy and sustainable diets do indeed remain inaccessible for over 3 billion people globally and 1 billion of whom reside in Africa. And that as we keep telling ourselves and will presumably be revealed in the Stock Take +4 exercise in a couple of months, the progress promised at the UNFSS has ultimately, we think, or we're worried, stalled. And then fundamentally, as we all know, the food systems come under enormous pressure right now. It's a scary moment in human history where we're trying to deal with a great many threats. And of course, I'm not telling you folks anything you don't already know, but if you're looking for a succinct and up-to-date review of the threats, then you might turn to this report, which we hope will provide some summaries of the key threats, such as, the effect of conflict that is undermining the lives and livelihoods of countless millions around the world, of the extremely turbulent policy environment that we find ourselves working in which the farmers and the food processors who are actually doing the hard work of moving food from farm to fork are struggling under. Of course, climate change and the emergence of zoonotic diseases are further threats that we need to be adapting to. And the financial turmoil kicked up by so many different factors. Every time I give this talk or versions of this talk, the latest financial turmoil has to be updated. And to give this report itself a bit of a moment to breathe, here is a sense of the tone so that you can get a feel for what we're talking about. That in 2022, in our report, we argue, Pests and diseases in Africa led to a $65 billion of crop losses in Africa. Conflict in Africa destroyed $120 billion in agricultural production in the 20-teens. That according to the International Monetary Fund, the outlook for the entire continent is one where debt levels are unsustainable, and those debt levels become more unsustainable as financial turmoil increases and interest rates perhaps rise even further. African food systems, we argue, need to be strengthened not only to 1.5 degrees of warming, but probably to at least 2 degrees of warming. And again, this is one of those slides that every time I give it, I think maybe I should nudge that up to 2.5 or 2.7 or maybe even 3 degrees. And to give again a sense of what is in the introductory chapters of the report, we focus on the experience of the Ministry of Health in Ethiopia, who argue that despite major achievements in improving food security and nutrition, progress is indeed threatened by external factors. And this poses great challenges to deliver nutrition and food security. And the data on the right speaks for itself. That's the rising levels of food insecurity in Malawi since 2021. As a consequence of all of this, and with aware that I don't want to catastrophize, or we don't want to catastrophize things, we are worried that food systems in Africa, unless they are focused on as a matter of massive urgent priority, do indeed face risk of collapse. And as a consequence, we hope that this report, which focuses on resilience, is vital, because building resilience will not only address short-term stresses, but also the long-term goals of universal, healthy, and access to diets. So with that as sort of an introduction, a survey of the introductory chapters, we also spend a fair bit of time talking about what resilience is. And resilience, of course, is one of those odd words, much like sustainability or development, that can mean something to everybody. In our case, we try to be disciplined about what resilience is and define resilience in 3 ways. And hopefully this parsing out of resilience might be helpful in your own thinking about this topic. First of all, the first form of resilience is the ability to be robust or to simply resist change. An agroecosystem, a farm based on, say, its soil health, may be able to remain productive despite a drought. That is a form of resilience. A second form of resilience is the ability of a system to bounce back or recover. For example, if a family loses a family member to illness or injury, how long does it take that family to get back on their feet after that crisis? But if the underlying conditions of the food system are unsustainable or inequitable, or if people are mired in poverty or whatnot, then maybe being robust or bouncing back isn't that meaningful. So the third form of resilience is ability to not bounce back, but bounce forward. I'm quoting a friend of mine, Alison Blay Palmer, who's a Canadian academic and writes a lot about these things. In other words, to bounce forward or reorient to a better state. Another thing that our report attempts to do is be extremely mindful of trade-offs. And if we imagine a policy intervention having some benefits and some negatives, that's what we mean by trade-offs. For example, many policy interventions, including some that we have all worked on, involve promoting high-yielding varieties of crops and modern fertilizer. And that may boost, of course, harvest, but if that results in a rise in the capital costs of farming, that may hurt smallholder farms. And one can imagine those technologies being used in a way that hurts soil health, for instance. Those are the sort of trade-offs that we need to be mindful of. So with that as a way of framing the issue of resilience, we try to then break into ways of building resilience. And I'll provide the sort of the framing and the high-level remarks, and then my colleagues from Malawi, Ethiopia, and Sierra Leone will provide the details in just a second. So in our report, therefore, we start with the idea that you can build resilience at the production end of the system by investing in crop diversity and soil health, and that will help improve the production and the resilience of the agro-ecosystem. But of course, that's not the only place where resilience can be built. Resilience needs also to be built in the value chain, that complicated network and infrastructure that links the farmer and the consumer. Can we make investments along the value chain to improve the efficiency and the ability of that system to remain productive no matter what? Tremendous amount of resilience also resides, of course, at the household level in the form of a person's assets, their social capital, their human capital, their financial capital. Can we make policy interventions at the human level, at the individual level, to help allow an individual to be better able to not only bounce back after a problem, but also build forward to a better future? Tremendous amount of resilience resides also at the community level. The community provides often a first line where a collective response can be marshaled in the case of a problem. And of course, there's the institutional level of response, the institutional resilience, the resilience provided by a formal safety net or forecasting tools. And we've tried to take this food system lens in addressing the issue of resilience and make interventions or make recommendations of interventions across this system. Another point that we argue is that if we can think of these 5 places to intervene in the food system as a way of building resilience, we're actually creating 5 different lines of defense that protect a food system against a perturbation. And not only allowing a food system to be more robust and to be rebound faster, but also ultimately to reorient to a more sustainable, equitable, and nutritious future. Moving into slightly more level of detail, if you read our report, we've taken a great deal of effort to try to identify some cross-cutting themes to explore in order to create a more resilient food system for all. And again, being ever mindful of using a food systems approach, we talk extensively about the need to focus policy not only on agriculture and boosting production, but also on producing more healthy and nutritious diets. That is a real precursor, and it's been great to work in particular, for example, with folks in Sierra Leone as they have broadened their initial focus on boosting rice production, which is a phenomenally good objective and is reducing that country's dependency on importing foreign sources of food, but broadening that out to include a focus, deliberate and explicit focus on healthy diets. A second cross-cutting theme that we draw on in this report is the importance and the need to provide training and incentives to incent and encourage farmers to enhance crop diversity and build up soil health as a critical aspect of building resilience. A third area, which has already been discussed at length, I'm sure, today and in this panel already, is the vital importance of dismantling barriers that face women and youth in particular. Women and youth, critically important aspects of the food system at the front line of delivering nutrition for all, often not consulted in the development of policies and programs. And the final cross-cutting theme is a need to embrace digital innovation. Now, we've intentionally put the need to embrace digital innovation last, not because it's not important. We believe that the digital innovations that are coming, which may, for instance, link remote sensing data with crop insurance and create better forecasting tools as just one example of how digital innovation can enhance resilience. In order for those digital innovations to indeed provide resilience and boost resilience, we think that first the focus needs to be on policy for healthy diets, providing training and incentives for crop diversity and soil health, and to dismantle the barriers facing women and youth. In other words, getting the policy environment right, getting the training right, and dismantling the barriers facing marginalized communities are precursors. And if we do those, then we will be able to see the benefits of digital innovation. Folks, the last key message at a high level before I pass things to my colleagues is that African countries cannot do this alone. For example, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change estimate that developing countries will need up to $127 billion per year by 2030 to adapt to climate change, and that figure will grow over the century. It's investments of a similar order of magnitude that we're talking about with regards to transforming food systems. We've already heard that this provides enormous return on investment, but we need to be able to marshal the private sector, the donor community, the multilateral agencies, as well as the African nations. And this is a bigger problem than any single country can adapt to. But with that somewhat gloomy argument, actually, the message that we hope that comes out of this report is one of hope, that building food systems that are resilient to 21st century shocks and stresses, it will absolutely take work and focus and investment all along the food systems. And we hope that our report provides some tactical guidance on this. But it's not like anything I'm saying here today is rocket science. Many of these arguments are extremely pedestrian and familiar to you. And it's that very pedestrian, familiar nature of these recommendations that gives me hope. We need to work hard so that traditionally marginalized groups are included in decision-making processes. We need to be mindful of trade-offs, but it's not like we're saying we need cold fusion in a bottle or a quantum computer or a community on Mars. What we're saying is that ultimately food systems that nourish and sustain and can be resilient to a crisis are in grasp for all of us. They will return economic benefits to our society collectively and individually. And ultimately, this is, we hope, a report that is both tactical but also one of hope, one of good news. So with that being said, I'd like to say an enormous thank you, Sandy and Team Irish Aid, for providing this opportunity for us to work with this. And I will stop sharing my slides and hopefully be able to now turn over and facilitate a conversation with our friends from Malawi, Ethiopia, and Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much indeed, Evan. And what we're going to have now is a discussion between Evan and our colleagues from the 3 countries, who I think are all here. So we'd like to see them all. Together, all of you have brought great energy and vision to this project. So it's lovely to be with you this afternoon. Evan, we're a little bit short of time. You were going to have a good 20 minutes for this. If you can speed up at all, that would be great. I'll leave you to invite our colleagues to say their main points, and you can come in and around managing the discussion as you best see fit. Thank you. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Sandy. And maybe Patrick, we can start with Sierra Leone. Can I invite you to speak for just a couple of minutes? Patrick, are you able to come off camera and join us?
Yes, thank you so much, Evan, and thank you, everybody. It's an honor for me to be here. I hope you are hearing me. Evan, just nod.
Yeah, we can hear you, Patrick, but we can't see you.
Oh, okay. So, can you see me?
That looks perfect. All right.
Okay.
Couple of minutes over to you, sir.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And it's an honor for me to be part of this very important Rome Nutrition Week. And thanks to Glopan for inviting all of us to be part of it today. Our participation in the study in Sierra Leone shows exactly along Ethiopia, Malawi, demonstrates our commitment to sustainable food systems. And if you know, for those that are very close to agriculture and food systems in Sierra Leone, we depend about 80% of Sierra Leoneans are food insecure. This for us is an alarming situation, and it's underpinned by various factors. Inflation is a major problem which inhibits people to access affordable, nutritious food, especially for average households. Malnutrition has been persistent over the years, as over a quarter of children under the age of 5 are still stunted, and nearly half of them are women who suffer from anemia. The effects of these, I think, have been well alluded to in the previous sessions. We are also over-reliant on imported food. About 32.2% of the national food consumption is imported. And that means shocks in the global market also have effects here in Sierra Leone. In terms of in our work, we try to see what are the efforts that the government and the people of Sierra Leone have been making to build resilience. And this links to the pillars that Professor Evans had rightly mentioned in the methodology. For us here, we found that the government has taken bold steps towards increasing the agricultural budget from 2% in 2023 to now 7% in 2025, which is in line with the CAADP requirement of 10%. We understand they are moving towards that. The government has also put together a flagship program called Feed Salon, which puts agriculture, food security, and nutrition as priority of government. But again, linking to the concluding remark of Evan, the government alone cannot do it because we require about $1.6 billion to build a resilient food system in the country. Through the presidential initiative, which the government has also put together, the presidential initiative.
Uh-oh, we seem to have lost Patrick. That's too bad. Okay, I am going to give Patrick about 5 seconds to jump back on. But Andrew, I see you ready and able to speak to the situation in Malawi. So maybe, Andrew, if you don't mind me pitching to you, and then maybe we'll get Patrick's final remarks at the end. Andrew?
Thanks so much, Evan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through loud and clear. Go for it.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate on behalf of my government, as well as my colleagues that have been working behind this work, for us to be involved in this great work and also participate in this very important discussion this afternoon. Malawi is in a precarious condition with regards to food security and nutritional outcomes. Exposed, to the space with these kind of hardships as a result of macroeconomic challenges that really compounded in a low kind of production, ability, issues to do with high inflation, as well as the rising debt that the country is also kind of, found itself trapped into, and also the negative climatic feedback that has really affected production of, sustainable, crops and livestock. And all these have actually provided their gleam faces on the nutrition outcomes. Our nutrition statistics are very poor, particularly reflected among women and children. Last January, almost like a fifth of the country was experiencing food insecurity. And that speaks volumes about the nutritional outcomes related to that. So what has been the response? The response was to look at food systems as a lever to developing, achieving our vision towards 2063 and much more towards 2030 when we're looking to become a lower middle income economy, but also meet most of the sustainable development goals, of which hunger and food insecurity are very key. So when we look at food systems from our programming perspective, it is a lever to deliver on these two key milestones and address these kind of macroeconomic challenges that we look at. From production, we work to optimize our productivity as a country within the agriculture sector and commercialize it so that the returns from people that are investing in the food systems are able to sustain them, but also go beyond building the resilience that is required to offset these challenges that we face. Again, the issue of making sure that we are really supporting our agriculture system to make it resilient through innovations, technologies is also very key by practicing climate smart agriculture. But not many of our people are able to adapt to this kind of environment because of low capacities to access farm implements, issues to do with policy trade-offs that you talked about. I mean, augmenting agriculture means we need more land, we need more hectareage, and that also cuts across the issue of environmental sustainability. So there are kind of policy trade-offs that have to be addressed in that respect. Again, the issue of making sure that there is a cross-sectoral approach to addressing food system challenges comes very clear because each and every sector is protecting their turf. And so there is kind of policy, the policy confluence requires some kind of heavy coordination machinery in place. Can you hear me? Right. So given the context where we sit, we look at food system transformation, which actually harmonizes our strategic development perspectives from production in the agriculture sector to ensuring that we are environmentally sustainably managing our environmental resources comes clear in terms of programming within the country. So as Malawi, we look at the report that's been produced by GLOPAN and many other initiatives that the country is looking at as one of the key aspects to drive us into evidence-based prioritization of resources as well as development programming to address key nutrition and food security challenges. I'll leave it there for the time being.
Super. Thank you very much, Andrew. Really important work that you guys are doing in Malawi. And I believe your colleague Miriam is also going to join us in the Q&A. So I'm just going to say hi to Miriam and cue that up. Patrick, you got cut off. Do you want to take 90 seconds and provide your final remarks? And then we'll go to the Ethiopian study. Patrick?
Yes. Well, just as I was mentioning, there's also a presidential initiative on climate change, renewable energy, and food security in place, which tries to bring leverage on the nexus between energy and food security, which for us is very key. Based on all of these, we have 5 high-level recommendations which came from this study, which I think will be our takeover. One is prioritization at the highest level by government will help build resilience in agricultural sector. Number 2 is private sector engagement, which requires creating an enabling environment, especially for medium, small, and enterprises, including women and youth, to be engaged in the food system is another priority. Number 3, the energy nutrition nexus. Access to sustainable energy for us, we believe, is a game changer. Thus, the need to integrate renewable energy access into food systems, particularly solar energy in the rural areas. This can radically improve both nutrition and resilience. Number 4 is the focus on research and innovation. We need to support community-based research and digital innovations that reflect the realities of the country. Finally, number 5 is the international and local alignment. Donor alignment and long-term international support are key, but must be aligned. We need to reduce fragmentation of projects and promote more coordinated effort, both between national efforts and donor efforts. Thank you very much, Evan, for giving me additional time.
My pleasure, Patrick. Always good to hear from you. I'd now like to call on the team from Ethiopia. Normally, we would have our colleague and friend Andrew Adnu joining us, but he's traveling right now. So Dr. Masaresha, maybe you can jump on. I'm hoping you're about to jump on. There we go. Oh, but you're labeled as Adnu.
Yeah.
Please join us, and the floor is absolutely yours. So nice to see you right now. Thanks for coming.
Evan. Thank you, Evan. Yeah, can I come in?
Yes, please do. You have 5 minutes, and it would be great to hear your perspectives on resilience from the Ethiopian perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. Indeed, one of our focus area in terms of the resilience of food system in Ethiopia, we were over the last few months, which we'll be focusing, was on Sakota Declaration. I think most of you are very aware of that. Sakota Declaration is an ambitious government commitment to make stunting zero by 2013 and beyond. And of course, this is a government commitment where the government created a multi-sectoral platform, coordination, and also implemented it. It was started a few years ago with a fewer districts, and later it has been expanded to over 200 districts. Going forward, in terms of our work, as other colleagues also clearly indicated, the food system has been affected by several factors. Like many other African countries, we have been affected by many factors, including climate and the pandemics, and also the global crisis, including the food price and many other crises, has also makes to somehow complicated. But as country, we have, through this process, with the support of global panel, we have identified key challenge to our resilience of food system in Sakota Declaration. And as way forward, also there are potential solutions which we can, cope up the challenge that will be, identified, and upcoming challenge also through this process. So one of the vision as a country, Ethiopia has several policy on food and nutrition. We have a very conducive policy environment, and the government is also committed in terms of implementing some of the innovative solution, even at the level of Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister. There has been a very big focus, especially on several food system and nutrition related activities, and also currently the coordination system, which would be happening at biannual, would be at Deputy Prime Minister, which coordinating all sectorial, including from health, agriculture, other sector, including the infrastructures sector, have been trying to coordinate. But one of the issues which through the process we identified is even the nature of multi-sectoral is very difficult. Working with different sectors, ministry, aligning their activities, a big challenge. And the other one also, we have seen also with the current development, the international development partner support has not been, in the way that we've been expected, despite, for example, some of the activity which, we are paying in also on climate and other factors are also very external, which to somehow, our contribution is minimal. So I think through this also, we'd like to encourage the international, donors to support and prioritize, for example, those countries where a big burden of malnutrition, including stunting. And given that the government is to contribute and commit in terms of resource coordination, and we need to encourage also the international donor to go forward, to support and support especially those flagship program. So from my perspective, in summary, we would like to see that the food system in Ethiopia, in terms of Kampala Declaration, has to brought the change, a real change in terms of health impact or the reduction of stunting. That is a bigger vision that we like to see, when we implement the broader food system. And with this, I thank you, and over to you, Ivan.
Thanks so much for that. Sandy, given the time, I'm going to propose that we just go to 3 final questions, one to Amos, one to Miriam. So Miriam, if you're on the call, maybe you can jump on, and then one to Andy. And then panelists, maybe you can look at the question that's in the Q&A, and you could even type an answer, because there's a really interesting question in the Q&A. But Amos, maybe I could flip to you first. You are one of the international experts. You are truly a global citizen. Every time I talk to you, you're in a different country or continent. Maybe you could reflect for us on from a nutritional perspective, what this project means in terms of promoting nutritious diets for all, because I usually come at this from an agricultural perspective. Over to you, Amos.
Thank you very much, Professor Fraser. It was an honor to work with you in generating this report. As an African, and therefore a stakeholder in the Africa Union's Kampala Declaration, I just wanted to say a thank you to the global panel and the African countries of Malawi, Sierra Leone, and Ethiopia for their leadership in this food systems resilience initiative. The Kampala Declaration that I refer to, as most of us are aware, is a set of continental commitments towards building resilient and sustainable agri-food systems in Africa. If you look at the report that Professor Fraser just presented, the insight from that report provide practical guidance that can directly support implementation of the Kampala commitment. But the good news here is we have the commitment and we have a resilience report here. And the 2 documents powerfully aligned, offering African governments, but also policymakers, a unique opportunity to operationalize the vision of food security and nutrition, which is Africa's vision, right? And this vision includes, promoting nutritious diet and nutritious food. Just 3 things from the report. One, what I see is a convergence with respect to the way the 2 diagnose and the problems, but also the shared priorities. So in terms of problems, both documents, and also as we saw in the presentation, identify systemic weakness within the African food systems, including the cascade of crises, climate variability, conflict, pandemics, but also the financial instability. And so collectively, the 2 documents offer some mutual, priorities or solutions, including committing to ensure food and nutrition security. If you look at the resilience report, it offers actionable strategies, including improving diet quality, nutrition resilience through helpful agronomic practices, and also supporting indigenous nutrient-rich foods. The report goes further to identify some pathways for implementation. And for me, going forward, I think one way to realize this is to ensure that we have African member states, African countries, Africans, including us, then use the Kampala Declaration as a political mandate that it is, and the resilience report as a technical blueprint to help embed resilience into the national, food system strategies that we all have, aligning into existing, flagship programs that we heard about in Sierra Leone and other countries. So, for example, in Ethiopia, they talked about the Kampala Declaration aiming to, eliminate stunting. In Malawi, the Malawi's Vision 2063, and in Sierra Leone, the Feed Saloon. All these aim to promote what? Nutritious diet. To conclude, I do know, and we all do know, all this can be done and should be done. And that Africa is not starting from, the scratch. Africa has the land. Africa has youth. Africa has biodiversity. Africa has what? Fast-growing economies. And now Africa has a global panel resilience report, which admonishes us to, without delay, deliberately invest in resilience in food systems. Otherwise, we have in our hands our food systems collapsing before our eyes. And so I do see these as what? Two powerful opportunities that Africans can leverage to address food systems challenges, especially promoting nutritious food and healthy diet. Thank you, and over to you.
Thanks, Amos. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're getting some great applause there. Thank you for that. And it's a powerful example, I think, of the GLOPAN report, the Kampala Declaration, Feed Salone, Secota Declaration, and the Malawi vision of the policy convergence process happening. Miriam, can I flip to you, because you have been working in this extremely exciting interministerial space in Malawi, where ministers of planning, health, agriculture are all working, to my external position or perspective, all working together on this. And that must be both exciting and hard from an operational perspective. Maybe you can reflect for a moment on your experience of trying to bring these ministerial elements together in a coherent way, kind of to realize the potential essentially that Amos has just laid out for us.
Thank you very much. To respond to your question, I think I must say that we have a framework in Malawi that we use ministries to operate, and every ministry has its own mandate, which is clearly spelled out. And then the issues of food system transformation and resilience kind of cuts across the different ministries, which brings in the challenge to coordinate that particular space. And our experience has been that it has been assigned to the Ministry of Agriculture as the convener of the food system transformation. However, the progress that we have seen over time has kind of slowed down. And this report is also a wake-up call for us to reinvigorate our actions and reprioritize and ensure that our governance space is well coordinated. And in that respect, there have been some strides that have been made. We have had a ministerial committee that has been established. My colleague Andrew can speak to that a lot. But there's that committee that has been established, cutting across different ministries so that it can help us to steer this food system transformation, because of the realization that it's spread across different ministries, and sometimes one ministry may not have the political clout to call another ministry and hold them accountable to the results that we are looking for. So much as it is a challenge, it's also an opportunity, because through the dialogue sessions that we have had, through the stakeholder discussions that we've done as part of this program, we have been able to ensure that even the actors that were never part of the food system discussions were brought to the table, and they were able to express their way, how they would want things to be done, including the private sector. So this is something that we are working on, and we hope that the system that we're trying to put in place, including the technical working groups, will help us to ensure that all the players within this multi-sectoral setup are brought together and rally to ensure that we achieve the goals that we want. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, Miriam. Appreciate you jumping in there. Sandy, what I propose is I'm going to pitch the last question to Andy and then throw back to you, and you'll have caught about 10 minutes back in your schedule. But Andy, you have got 25 years, maybe more now, we're getting old, working on that science policy interface for food systems and nutrition. Maybe you can reflect at the high level, take us back to the high level as to what this project you think means in terms of translating science into policy so that we end up with these more resilient, nutritious, equitable food systems that we've been working for so many years.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. And like you say, this draws more on a longer period of time than just the last 2 years of Irish aid funding. I'd probably nod in particular to about 8 years worth of funding before from the UK government that I worked on research projects together with Andrew, Miriam, and others in Malawi, looking at food system transformation there. So that cooperation between donors, private sector, international community, and in particular, I suppose I'm here representing the research community. What we as researchers can bring is different perspectives, but equally that embedded nature, not only of somebody like Andrew from a National Planning Commission representing government, and the fact that he's been involved in looking at climate scenarios, looking at different model outcomes, the work as well with Luana, where Miriam's based, and Malawi University of Science and Technology, who we've also worked with, looking at different water futures and irrigation potential in that country. Like you said, there are opportunities with new technologies, whether it's plant breeding, whether it's climate and weather services, irrigation, remote sensing. So this is probably in the production end, but it'd be the same with the value chain and looking at new storage, new processing opportunities. That we do that together with traditional knowledge. So many things like agroforestry, conservation agriculture can be simple approaches to improve soil health, and really start to look at the integration of the traditional knowledge with the new technologies, but doing that in a way that is, gender aware, looking at the views of the youth, looking at social inclusion as key elements. And it's not just outside scientists saying this is a new variety of maize or millet or whatever it might be. So in a way, that grounding of the scientific innovation together with both the local capacity building in countries of both universities and government staff, but also then that integration into the sort of production of new futures, and that there are opportunities out there that really Africa is ready to grasp, and we as the international community and researchers are there to help and support.
Great. Well said, Andy. Thank you for that. Okay, panelists, I think I'm going to pass things back over to Sandy now, if that's okay, but a huge thank you from me, and I appreciate everybody's time and attention.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Evan and colleagues, for that very useful discussion. I think we made a lot of good points there, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. So many thanks. We now turn to the last part of our meeting, to perspectives from Rome. So I'm going to invite our Ambassador Condolo up to the dais. Thank you very much, Peter. You can relax and sit in a more comfortable chair, perhaps. And also, I'd like to invite the Deputy Permanent Representative of Lesotho, Ka there. I think you can. Would you like to come up? Thank you. So we've invited each of you to listen this afternoon to the discussion that we've had about the resilience work, and we very much like to get your reaction, your insights into any conclusions that you may have. So may I invite you first, Madam Ambassador, to make your comments.
Sandy, for inviting us to this event. I will just possibly provide, Zambia's perspective on this, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's an honor to share Zambia's perspective on the theme building resilience and enhancing nutrition in Africa's food system. Africa stands at a crossroad. The continent faces a deepening nutritional crisis and fragile agri-food system that jeopardizes the health, well-being, and prosperity of its people. According to the 2024 State of the Food and Nutrition Report, Africa continues to have the largest number of people affected by hunger, nearly 300 million in 2023. Globally, over half of the estimated 500 people projected to be chronically undernourished by 2030 will be in Africa. Further, malnutrition remains a major public health concern across Africa. Tackling it is essential for building human capital and achieving inclusive development. The urgency is clear. We must take bold, coordinated, and sustainable action to transform Africa's food systems. Nutrition is not only a health issue, it's an economic imperative for the continent's growth. Zambia faces a triple challenge: malnutrition, food insecurity, and climate vulnerability. Firstly, malnutrition is stifling Zambians' future. Currently, 23% of children under 5 years suffer from stunting, undermining their health, education, and economic potential. Secondly, food insecurity remains widespread. The FAO and WFP Hunger Hotspots report identified Zambia as a hunger hotspot, with 5.8 million people projected to face acute food insecurity by March 2025. Thirdly, climate change continues to devastate Zambia's food system. The 2023-2024 El Nino-induced drought led to a widespread crop failure and water shortages, affecting close to 6.6 million people who rely on rain-fed agriculture. In addition, Zambia's heavy debt burden limits investments in agriculture and social protection, water and sanitation, while poverty, especially in the rural and female-headed household, remains alarmingly high. Yet we are taking action. Through the National Food and Nutrition Policy, Zambia aims to achieve sustainable food and nutrition security and to eliminate all forms of malnutrition in order to have a well-nourished and healthy population. So among the things that Zambia is doing is promoting nutrition-sensitive agriculture by supporting smallholder farmers and enhancing climate resilience through the Sustainable Agriculture Financial Facility. We're increasing access to affordable finance mechanization, irrigation, and extension services while scaling up climate-smart agriculture. We're also strengthening policy coherence across sectors and empowering women and children through targeted interventions that improve access to nutritious food, healthcare, and education. Programs such as a homegrown school meals policy are transforming the lives of school children by providing nutritious meals and supporting smallholder farmers with market access. Furthermore, Zambia's participation in the Coalition of Action on Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems for Children and All. Earlier this year, Zambia reaffirmed its commitment at the Nutrition for Growth Summit in Paris, aiming to reduce stunting to 15% from 32% by 2030 through increased investments such as multi-sectoral approach. Our flagship initiative, the Feed Zambia Zero Hunger Program, implemented under the Office of the Vice President, aligns with the Comprehensive Agriculture Development Program and the Zero Hunger Coalition. At the district level, with support from the National Food and Nutrition Commission and development partners, we're implementing scaling up nutrition initiatives through a coordinated and multi-sectoral framework. It should be noted, as others who spoke earlier, spoke about the Kampala Declaration, which Zambia has endorsed in January, which sets a bold vision for building resilient agri-food system across Africa. Now is the time for decisive action. So during this Rome Nutrition Week, let us reaffirm our shared commitment. We urge partners and stakeholders to scale up innovative financing for smallholder farmers and invest in resilience. In the face of growing challenges, strengthen collaboration with FAO, IFAD, and WFP and other members is critical. So together we can create lasting solutions that secure Africa's nutrition, food security, and economic future. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for describing what are obviously formidable challenges, but as you say, a bold vision is really taking shape. So congratulations on that. So I'm now going to turn to our last contributor. Thank you very much. Would you like to stand up there? Go ahead. So you have 5 minutes to speak. This is again our Deputy Permanent Representative of Lesotho, Kare Mofili-Klein. You have 5 minutes, and thank you very much for your patience at this stage of the day.
Okay, thank you, Prof. It is a great honor to speak on behalf of the ambassador of the Kingdom of Lesotho, and also as the co-chair of the group of the group of Friends of Nutrition, right? It's GOF, the group of Friends of Nutrition. And also, I would like to commend the Global Panel on Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition for the timely and vital report on building resilience and enhancing nutrition in Africa's food systems. I would also like to thank United Against Malnutrition and Hunger for its partnership in advocating for inclusive and sustainable solutions. The findings of the project and the report, while centered on Ethiopia, Malawi, and Sierra Leone, are uncomfortably familiar to us in Lesotho. The challenges these countries face, that is climate shocks, food insecurity, undernutrition, and constrained public budgets, is a clear reflection in many nations across our continent. In Lesotho, we have seen how the effects of droughts, soil degradation, poverty, and economic fragility undermines both agricultural productivity and the nutritional status of our people. A large percentage of our population remains food insecure, and stunting in children, as per the World Health Organization's child growth standards, persists at alarming levels. The Global Panel's report rightly falls for a good food systems transformation that is resilient, inclusive, and nutrition sensitive. I want to particularly endorse its 10-point checklist for policymakers. In Lesotho, we are taking steps in this direction, although with many challenges. Like, for instance, our national multi-sectoral nutrition policy seeks to coordinate efforts across agriculture, health, education, and social development sectors. We are working to scale up homegrown school feeding programs that not only provide nutritious meals to children, but also support local smallholder farmers. Furthermore, through partnerships with the United Nations country offices, we are piloting climate smart agriculture initiatives in vulnerable districts across Lesotho, linking improved production with enhanced dietary diversity. However, as the report underscores, scaling such initiatives requires more than goodwill. We need sustained financing, stronger institutions, access to reliable data, and critically, political will at its highest level. This is where the Kampala Declaration can serve as a continental beacon. Its focus on resilient and sustainable agri-food systems aligns with the It means building systems that can absorb shocks without collapsing, adapt to new realities, and transform in ways to ensure long-term food and nutrition security. In Lesotho, this means not only improving agricultural techniques, but also improving and investing in social protection systems, early warning mechanisms, water management and infrastructure, and education for farmers. Lesotho is a small country, but we are determined. We believe in learning from regional experiences. The examples of policy coherence in Malawi, the community engagement in Sierra Leone, and Ethiopia's efforts to mainstream nutrition in agriculture are very instructive. We are also eager to share our lessons, especially regarding how mountainous terrain and ecological fragility demand tailored approaches to resilience building. In closing, I echo the report's call for bold action. Africa cannot afford the cost of inaction, not when our young population is growing, not when our ecosystems are under stress, and not when the risk of future shocks is increasing. Let us invest now in food systems that nourish, withstand disruption, and empower our communities, especially our women and youth, to shape a healthier and more resilient Africa. Rise, Africa, rise. God bless Africa. I thank you all.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, thank you very much to our two speakers for this last session of the afternoon. I think we've got some very good insights, particularly into the two countries, Zambia and Lesotho, and we would be very interested in getting more feedback in Madam Ambassador. So now I'd just like to make a few quick closing remarks. I think we've heard today that there are many challenges ahead for African food systems, but I think we've also heard that these challenges should not be seen as a barrier, but as an opportunity to drive forward the great and rapid changes that are needed. And that's because I think the resilient food systems that produce the foods for sustainable, healthy diets can support economic progress, of course, whether directly through trade, employment and innovation, or indirectly, for example, through reduced healthcare costs. They are also more resistant to sudden shocks and threats posed by climate change. But it's also clear, of course, that governments can't do this alone. So donors, civil organisations, civil society organisations, the private sector, the research community need to work with governments now to drive forward these positive actions to deliver not just sustainable healthy food systems, but food systems which are also resilient to provide universal access to healthy diets. I'd really like to thank, finally, the speakers, the panelists and distinguished guests for participating in this event, and of course Irish Aid for funding the work, and also the many colleagues at IFAD, particularly Antonella and her team, who put in a great deal of work to help deliver this event. And thanks too to the audience here in the building, but also the audience online for staying with us for the whole afternoon. So thank you, and our session is now closed. There is one important announcement that Antonella is just reminding me of. At the end now, we can say that there are going to be refreshments outside the room offered by IFAD and IFC. So please help yourselves.